Hi guys and welcome back. In this video, I'll show you some DIYs that you can make with things you already have at home. I noticed that many craft shops are no longer shipping worldwide, and even Amazon has limited the delivery of non-essential items. So I tried to keep the supplies here as basic as possible, and you should also be able to find these in supermarkets or pharmacies. I've also added a list of substitutes, so be sure to check the description box below in case you're really missing something. In Austria, it's now mandatory to wear face masks in shops and public transport. So the first DIY is going to be a pig plushie with a removable face mask. I think this is a nice way for children to understand what's going on, and it helps them get used to the sight of people wearing face masks without feeling afraid. This pig can be made using a single sock, and it doesn't have to be a fluffy one like many of my other tutorials. Normal socks are actually easier to sew because you can see what you're doing a lot better. First, turn the sock inside out and press it flat with the heel part facing down. Now draw on a curve for the head and 2 leaf-shaped ears. Make sure that this isn't too far away from the heel, and the end point of the head should actually be touching the place where the heel begins. So as always, I'm going to be using dark thread because you can see it on camera, but for best results, you can match the thread with the color of the sock. If you don't have a needle at home, then many supermarkets or drugstores actually sell emergency sewing kits. Those should still be open during lockdown in most countries. Start by backstitching along the outline. A backstitch is where you sew 1 stitch forward and half a stitch back. This creates a very strong bond that won't rip when you stuff the plush. For more advice, please check out my sewing techniques video where I show all of these stitches in detail. Now cut out the head close to the outline, but be careful not to rip any stitches. Then cut off the toe of the sock so you can turn it the right way around. In most plushies, I normally stuff the ears, but for this pig design, we're going to leave them unstuffed. Be sure to push the ears fully outwards and make sure the shape looks nice and even. For the inside, I'm using polyester stuffing, which I know many people probably don't have at home. A great substitute is simply cotton wool, and you can get big packs of this from any pharmacy. I made this black cat plush using cotton wool, and there was barely any difference compared to polyester. Another trick is to cut open an old cushion. Cushion fillers are exactly the same as toy stuffing, and they're usually cheaper as well. Grab a big handful of stuffing, almost the same size as the plush itself. Push this inside using 1 smooth motion and adjust it so you have a nice head shape. Now take an even bigger ball of stuffing and use it to make the body. I've made so many of these plushies, and I'm always amazed at how much stuffing actually fits inside. Then sew a running stitch along the open edge of the sock and pull it closed like a drawstring. As you can see, the opening still looks a bit messy, so you have to repeat this at least 1 more time. Simply sew through the bumpy bits like this and keep pulling until it's neatly closed. Next, take the toe part of the sock and check that it's inside out. Draw a small oval and backstitch along this line. Now cut it out and then cut a tiny opening in one side. Turn this around and you can attach it using the same thread. Just make sure the needle is on the correct side first. I decided not to stuff the nose here to keep the face flat for the face mask. However, this plush will also look very cute with a slightly puffy nose. Attach this using a ladder stitch, which is alternating 1 stitch on the nose and 1 stitch on the face. I'm going to use embroidery thread to make the nostrils, but this is entirely optional. You can use bits of felt, beads, fabric paint, nail polish, or even 2 dots of glue mixed with black eyeliner. I'm making a French knot, which is when you wrap the thread several times around the needle and then carefully pull it to create a dot. Now I'm using some beads for the eyes, and once again there are so many ways to do this. The easiest way is just to cut out circles of black fabric and stick those on. I'm going to attach both eyes with the same thread, which is a slightly harder technique. However, this gives a very cute effect because the eyes are slightly indented and it prevents them from coming off easily. For the first time, I got to test this out myself because Isabel tried her hardest to get the eye off and didn't succeed. Lastly, just finish up with some blusher and the pig blush is done. Of course, you can also add arms and legs as well, and I've linked several videos below with the details. The next part is making our removable face mask. For this one, I'm going to use a short white sock with a stretchy band. First, I'm going to cut this off and then cut it again to create 2 elastics. These fit perfectly around the head. Now I'm taking the remaining sock fabric and drawing a face mask shape on top. I think we're all face mask experts by now, so you can either go for a normal one like this, or change the shape to make an FFP2 or FFP3 design. Then backstitch along the line, cut it out and turn it around using the same method that we used for the nose. Then sew it onto the elastic bands, and the important part is to do this while it's on the plushie's face. This can be a bit fiddly, but it lets you maintain the perfect amount of stretch so you can easily take the mask off later on. I decided to add a tiny bit of stuffing through the hole in the back just to give it a nicer shape. And now you can simply pop the mask on and off like this. Next up, I have an easy Play-Doh recipe. The credit for this goes to Baby Play Hacks on Instagram, and I've made this many times during lockdown for Isabel. Of course, this isn't just for kids, and it's very therapeutic to play with even if you're older. If you can't find the supplies to make slime right now, then this is a pretty good alternative. Everything with this DIY is probably in the kitchen already, though please make sure it's not something you urgently need during lockdown. You will need flour, salt, cream of tartar, oil, and food coloring. Cream of tartar makes the dough a bit more elastic, but you can skip this if you don't have it. In German-speaking countries like Austria, it's actually really hard to find cream of tartar sold alone, but you can get it inside Weinstein baking powder. It's this ingredient on the back, so be sure to check that you're using Weinstein baking powder and not the regular type. First, add 1 cup of flour to a bowl. You can easily use a normal drinking cup for this, just make sure you measure everything using the same container. Then add half a cup of salt, followed by 1 tablespoon of cream of tartar. Mix all the dry ingredients together. Add 1 tablespoon of oil, and this can be any type of cooking oil. I found that coconut oil works really well because it turns solid at colder temperatures, which helps the Play-Doh keep its shape. Lastly, add 1 cup of boiling water and mix everything well. You can use your fingers after a while, but be careful because the dough is still going to be quite hot. I'm dividing this into 6 portions to make different colors. I know that there's some debate right now about using edible ingredients in DIYs, especially during lockdown. I think this really depends on how easy it is to get groceries and what the situation is like in your country. I personally felt that this recipe was fine because it only uses 1 cup of flour, and the result can be used to entertain Isabel for many days. In addition, Austria never had a food supply problem, so luckily there weren't any limits on what we can buy from the supermarket. The finished Play-Doh has a soft, grainy texture that's very soothing to play with. If you're not making this for a toddler who might eat it, then you can also add essential oils, vanilla essence, or glitter to enhance the sensory effect. It holds its shape surprisingly well, and you can actually sculpt simple things with it. However, it's not as sturdy as an air-dry clay, so you can't really keep the finished pieces. Once you're done with this, you can wrap it in plastic and keep it in the fridge for a week. Many recipes for salt Play-Doh claim that you can play with it for several weeks, but one of mine actually went moldy in the fridge after 2 weeks, so I wouldn't recommend keeping it for that long. Lastly, I have an incredibly simple DIY using toilet paper rolls, which I'm sure all of you have at the moment. Start by cutting off one end to get a ring. Then fold one side to make a sharp edge. Continue down the circle until you end up with a pentagon shape like this. All the sides should be as close in length as possible, and I found that it wasn't too difficult to just eyeball this. However, if you want to be super precise, then you can measure out the circumference and divide it by 5. The result was 2.66 centimeters, so you can mark out each segment using this. Once you have the pentagon, press in the sides to create 5 points, and this is very similar to the DIY paper stars tutorial. You can easily cut a hole inside and hang this up using dental floss or string. You could decorate a plant with these or hang them up along a shelf. If you have more craft supplies at home, then you can easily paint or decorate these stars as well. This is a fairly Christmassy DIY, so I'm sure you can find a lot more uses later on in the year. I really hope these were useful and will help you pass some time if you're bored. Please also follow me on TikTok and Instagram under my username Macaroon. I'm Joanna, thanks for watching, and please stay safe. Bye!